Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a third submission by Natalia of her horse Luna. Now, I have put this little piece on here, which was at the end of the tape, because this was actually from last January, and I wanted you to be able to see this now and then see it again when we get there. So you can see in this clip back a year ago how hollow the horse was, very, very short, choppy strides, head very high, very inverted neck there. At times you can even see the horse kind of fall out behind as she tries to make a turn, things like that. Though she's on the right track here, this is just the beginning, and you can see that she's starting to get this horse to stretch a little bit, even back here. But when we get to the next, the clips from just recently, you'll see how completely different this horse is. Now, she's certainly on the right track here of doing the right thing. She didn't get it in the trot, so she came back to the walk, though this horse needs to stretch out much, much more. But you can see here, once again, how the horse is just bracing upwards on the bridle. You can see the inverted neck there, and look how big the hole is behind the saddle there. And so this horse has been going hollow for a long time before Natalia started improving it. Once again, see how little choppy steps. There's no real elevation of the horse. Horse isn't pushing off the ground there. It's just pulling itself along by its shoulders. Whenever you see a horse's neck inverted like you see here, just look at the feet and see, is there any lift from the back legs? In other words, is the horse lifting itself up? And you can see here that it's not. It's just moving very flat-footed and kind of pulling itself, stabbing its front legs and pulling itself along by the shoulders. Once again, because it's not over its back. And you can see that she's on the right track here. She starts to get the horse to stretch a little bit, but we'll see in a moment how far she's come. Once again, you can see it looks a little better as it comes down there, but you can see this horse's tendency is just to throw its head up in the air. Now, let's come to the more recent tapes. Now look at this horse. So here's the same horse, half a year later, and look how completely different it is. Look how the underside of the neck has completely relaxed. Natalia has really done a wonderful job with this horse bringing it along. Look how much longer the step is, but look how much slower the horse is striding. In the previous tape, we saw how the horse was just very, very fast, pulling itself along with its shoulders. And now we can see the horse is very nicely stretching into the contact. Once again, we look for those diagonal pairs to move together, which we see really nicely here. But look how much freer the shoulder now looks. If you go back, and we're going to see that tape at the end again, actually go through this, and you'll see how much the horse was stabbing behind that, in front rather, stabbing the front legs and dragging itself along. Which, once again, as I said, whenever you see a horse that's ewe-neck, that's what it's doing. It's pulling itself with its shoulders and developing that underside of the neck muscle, which is exactly what we don't want to see. You can even see that on the racetrack. Next time, just look at some races online and look at the horses that run correctly. A correctly galloping horse gallops over its back, just like we want it to do in the trot and canter here in dressage work. There's absolutely no difference. Any sport horse that's going to go correctly and last a while and be a joy to ride in whatever that sport is, be it polo or be it jumping or be it just dressage itself. If it's not over its back, it's going to wear out quite quickly when we ask it to do the kind of extreme things that people ask in jumping and even in the higher levels of dressage. But look how beautifully this horse is slowed down. Natalia's done such a good job. She's stuck there to... Now what we're seeing here today is numerous little clips from different days. She hasn't been able to get somebody to actually film a whole ride for her, so I'm not sure what order these come in, but it's around the same time. But once again, we can see how much different this is from what we saw a year ago, last January, when the horse was just basically running on its front end. Now, obviously, it still has some lifting up to do here, but that will come in time. Once again, once we get the horse free and swinging over its back, what happens in time, the neck comes up all by itself. It starts to come up and out as the shoulders get pulled up. That is, the withers get pulled up through the shoulders, and the horse begins to develop a much more uphill stance. So once again, remember, whatever horse you're training, it's going to look much more uphill after it gets a good couple of years of foundation work, which is what it should do before any horse is considered ready to go into collection. Of course, that being the problem today, we're breeding horses that look good. That is, they come out really nicely and are easy to train, but once again, if we don't put it back on them, the same things happen to them. We see so many of them just go down the hill. They look pretty good, at training level, and then by the time they're going fourth level in Prix St. George, they're completely hollow, and we see all these same problems that we see on wrench string horses, which is really sad. But once again, she's done such a lovely job. And even when she comes up there a little bit compared to what we saw in that first little clip, when she would just throw her head right up in the air. So this horse has actually learned, as they all do, once we teach them to correctly to get over their backs, you know, that's how they want to go because it feels comfortable. I mean, you can't deny that this horse looks more comfortable than it did in that first clip. I mean, now it looks like it's going along, its ears are much floppy and much more relaxed because we're asking it to do something that's physically capable of doing. Once again, that being the biggest problem in training today is people just assume that these things are tricks, that we just have to teach them tricks. And that's not at all what dressage is. Dressage has always been about, you know, a logical gymnastic progression of developing the horse so that it can do these things more easily and, of course, willingly. But once again, look how lovely this horse is now floating over the ground. Now, from this in time, what we'll start to see is that horse will just start to elevate itself. The forehand will start to come up by itself. You know, but of course, when horses are in the very beginning stages, they're on the forehand somewhat. Like this horse is still on the forehand, but nowhere nearly on the forehand as it was the way it was being ridden before, with his head up in the air. So once again, remember that any horse that's hollow is always on the forehand, no matter how high it lifts its legs, which has nothing to do with dressage. Remember, in dressage, we want the horse to push off the ground and push us up into the air, not to just drag us along by the shoulders. So that was really good, shows a really good improvement. Now we're seeing another clip indoors. This is a really nice walk. It's getting a lot longer than it was before. Had a little moment there when she came up for a moment, but not bad at all. And you're doing just the right thing. The horse resists a little bit, and you just got to soften it back into it again without making a big deal about it. You know, people too often are too ready to just, you know, get after the horse extremely for every little thing. So pretty good turn down the center line there, as well as I expect it to be. Now you can see this horse is really quite long. It's a little difficult to connect her. But Natalia is doing a really good job here with that. And once again, she's doing just the right thing. The horse resists a little bit, and she just softens it right back into that stretch. Now in this clip, we can see the horse a little more clearly. You can see that the horse still has a dip behind its back there, which of course from this work will go away in time. But once again, if we compare this to the first clip that we saw, now this horse still needs to get a little deeper and a little more consistent, but compared to what we saw in the first one, this was on the right track. Now everything is basically working pretty well most of the time here. And we can see how much more, in this clip, how much more the horse is starting to swing, how it's starting to swing through, and we can even see a little bit of lift showing here. That is, the front end is just starting to get lighter looking, like it's not so earthbound. And that's what happens all by itself. You know, you've got to get in your mind that contrary to popular belief, you cannot pull a horse off of its forehand. You can pull its neck over, and you can make it snap its legs up in the air like a saddlebred, but that's not dressage. A correctly trained dressage horse elevates itself when it physically can, and that's what we want them to do. And it's only when they do it, you know, because they can, that the horse will do this willingly and become a willing participant in all this. And some little problems coming up and down here, but you're dealing with it very nicely, just getting her to soften again, get the stretch back out there. You know, as you were saying in your letter to me, and which is very true, I mean, this horse is just not even ready to do a turn down the center line, so don't try to hit exactly the center line. Just, once again, my rule is always at this level, and at every level really, is where is the horse comfortable? In other words, how wide a turn do I need to make to keep the horse comfortable? And here in the canter, we've seen an improvement over what we saw, you know, back in the previous submissions. The horse is certainly starting to canter over its back. That's actually pretty good right there. Still would like to see the neck. It's not really rolling completely through its back yet, but that's pretty good compared to some of the other videos that, once again, that we saw previous. But you see, as you make a downwards transition, the horse really doesn't have enough strength to hold it there, and she kind of has to fall apart for a minute. And that's normal. You would not want to try to hold the horse together in those transitions. Once again, that's the other problem that I see people doing all the time, is they're trying to make perfect transitions when the horse isn't even, you know, consistent in the bridle at the walk or the trot, and they're worrying about whether it stays consistent between the walk and the trot. Well, you can't do that. You just worry about getting the horse consistent in the walk, then get it consistent in the trot, and what you'll see is all by themselves, the transitions will just improve. And pretty soon the horse will be able to make them without falling in a heap the way you just saw there. But I like how you kept that canter to a very small phase. That was really a good leg yield in the walk that time. The horse could even stretch down a little more, but that was not bad. Certainly a good beginning. You have developed a really nice contact with the mouth of the horse as well. You do a very good job of not letting the horse escape you, which is the hardest thing, at first for people to get, and also why we widen our hands like this when we do, because at first it's just the idea of keeping a consistent contact without any backwards pressure against the mouth of the horse. That's the difference between correct contact and incorrect contact. Incorrect contact takes a hold of the horse's mouth. Correct contact just accompanies the horse's mouth to an unbroken lines, and it feels soft and relaxed. It never feels hard. We might close our hands for a minute, but we never are going to just close our hands and hold against the mouth of the horse and try to hold its head down or pull its head down or any of the myriad of other things that we see people trying to do with the reins. Once again, the reins should do very little. As Nuno Oliveira said, the best reins in the best hands in the world work like a pair of side reins. They just limit the length of the rein, and then everything else is done by bringing the horse forward. Now here we see even a little better walk than what we saw in the last one. Now the horse is stretching deeper in this walk and stepping consequently deeper under itself. So this is really good. This is the best walk we've seen so far. Really nice here. I don't know when this was taken, but we can see once again, especially when the horse gets all the way there, we can see that it lifts its back, and we see the hole start to disappear a little bit behind the horse's back. And once again, she's also pulled up, through abdominal wall there quite a bit more than she was before. So we're starting to see that, that whole body of the horse through the flanks beginning to take shape, just like a human athlete. You can see the edge of their abdominal muscles along the edge of the rib cage. Well, we should be able to see the same thing with the horse, because remember, we're not just getting the horse to lift its back, it's pulling up through its abdominal wall as well. They work together. In other words, it's just like Pilates. Anybody who doesn't have a feel for this kind of thing for themselves, you should realize that the human body works in exactly the same way. And, if you're not in shape, I highly recommend that you get in shape and understand how your body functions. And you'll find that a lot of it carries over to what we do with horses and what we're expecting them to do. Now, they're on four feet instead of two, but the same thing applies. And you can see once again here through this horse's flank now, as you can see how it's pulling up much more through the back, and how much longer this walk is than it was in some of the previous ones. Like the one we just saw in the indoor. This is much, much better. And she has a little moment there, comes up, but you correct it beautifully. So this horse is beginning to learn how to carry the weight. And remember, that's what we want to do. We want to teach them a way of doing this. So once we teach them, they want to go this way because they feel comfortable. They'll seek the comfort in the work. And then all we simply do is just develop them enough that all these other things become possible instead of trying to force it out of them. So here, once again, this is a much better trot than what we saw before. It's slower, deeper. There's starting to be a little bit of lift in it. Though I would like the neck to be still a little bit longer here than it is. There, like that. That's really quite good. Little short in the neck here, so once again, we like that to be a little bit longer, but once again, the horse is starting to free up. You can see how the front end is starting to come off the ground a little bit all by itself, and that's what happens when we get the horse working over its back, and the changes begin to happen in the horse's body. That is, the withers begin to pull up through the shoulders. Now look how flowing this is, and look how much deeper. Now this horse is tracking right into the track of its front feet, and that's just what we're looking for, the tracks up. Now, as far as that goes, that's different depending on the horse's conformation and length of its back and that sort of thing. But any horse, you'll be able to see a difference in how they track up, whether they're over their back or not. I mean, now this horse looks like it's flowing over the ground. The steps and the diagonal pairs look quite in unison, which is very good. Just like that. Look how beautiful that is right there. Now see how much more flexion is in the hock now? We're going to go back and see that earlier piece at the end, because I left that on there so we could see it again after seeing that. Now that's really good. Right there is where you want this horse to be. Just like that is optimal. And you can see how all of a sudden, she's starting to carry herself out too. And as you said, this was a horse that was also broken at the third vertebrae, so you've done a very good job. Always remember, if you have a horse that you've bought or somehow or you've done it yourself and you're trying to reschool the horse, and once again, don't feel bad about the mistakes you've made in the past. Just don't make them in the future and correct what you do. I mean, if you haven't completely ruined your horse and lamed its joints forever, most of them can come back. And once they do, they come back much more happy to do the work once we develop them correctly the way Natalia is doing a wonderful job of here. And once again, you see how, it really just takes a rider who's reasonably confident in the saddle, can walk, trot, and canter. To learn this basic work, this is what makes the rest of it easy. If you can learn to do this, your horses will develop into the highest levels of whatever you want to do with them. And once again, as I said, now, if you watch the greatest riders in the world, and I'm talking about the great riders, not the ones people call great, who buy made horses and train them until the wheels and show them till the wheels fall off. Those aren't great riders. Those are just people who are lucky enough to have enough money to buy up these horses and use them up. But as I tell to people all the time, look behind the ribbons. Before you say, or you even want to take a lesson from somebody, ask yourself, are they really a trainer? Many of the top riders today are not trainers at all. They're just people who are having these very expensive horses bought for them, and they ride them for a couple of years till the wheels fall off, and they buy another one. That's not a real trainer. So when you go out to seek someone to look for, and I suggest to everyone, they ask me, well, I find it, well, certainly don't take a lesson from anybody till you go to their barn and watch them for a week. I would never even consider taking a lesson from somebody who I hadn't watched work horses and teach other people. Then before you waste your own money, you can decide, what's the right thing to do. So we can see with that canter, it gets a little bit hurried, and now the trot's a little hurried after that. And once again, I would still keep the canter here to a minimum with this horse, just about what you're doing. Try it every few days or so. Because remember what we don't want to do. Remember, when a horse is hollow, basically it has no shock absorber. So the faster we go, the harder it is on the horse's legs. So when you canter a horse that's not over its back, it puts much more damage to the hard tissue of the joints. So we have to be really careful, and that's the whole real trick to keeping horses sound, is just don't lame them up on the way to trying to get them somewhere, so to speak. So we've got to keep coming back and getting the shock absorber over the back, and not drive the car for a while if it doesn't have them. We need to just keep building it before we drive it. So by all means, test the canter, but I would not do a whole lot of it still. I still see her once in a while when she canters, there's a sense of bracing against her front legs a little bit, and that's what I'm talking about. That can be quite damaging to the horse's legs if we do much of it. Now, from what I see here, you're not really doing a whole lot of it, and that's what I want you to keep it to. Just test it every now and then. But look how beautiful this leg yield. Now, that was wonderful. Look how clearly the horse came under. She had a little skip there at the end, but that was really, really good, and this is really a good stretch now. And once again, we can see how this horse's whole demeanor has changed since that early video that we saw. And there's some still pictures as well that Natalia sent me, that if you see them, you would understand. Once again, this idea that, you don't have to see horses work to know exactly how they've been trained. Just go look at them standing there without a saddle on. It tells the whole story. Their backs are collapsed, and all you see is these big tented hip bones. That is, by tented, I mean they look like a pyramid. The hip comes up so high and steep. And that's a horse that's well on its way to kissing spine. And it's amazing how many upper-level dressage and jumping horses today look like that. Now, of course, in jumping, there's no requirement that the horse, they can jump however they want to, so to speak, which is a sad thing. But in dressage, we're supposed to have these, this foundation work that's supposed to be there. And if you read the rule book, it's all there. But sadly, somehow, all over the world, the judges got away from that. It's almost as if they don't even know it exists anymore, and we begin to let people pass up the ranks in dressage without learning how to ride. So now we have all these people riding at FEI, who think they know how to ride, but they're really just destroying horses. They're completely collapsed in the back and helt against the hands. I mean, the things we see at horse shows, and it's interesting because when I take people to horse shows now who don't know anything about horses and they see these people riding like that, they just kind of go, as one person said to me, what are they trying to do? Because it doesn't look like anything, weirdly enough, to anybody except the people who ride like that, which somehow seem to think it looks beautiful. I don't know. It certainly does not to me. I don't know how we got to that place. But once again, coming back to a big swinging walk here, this is really nice. So much longer than what we saw before. And once again, remember how much muscle you build in the walk. If you get the horse over its back in the walk, you can do a lot of work, and that's what we want to do, because you can do a lot of walk. It's low impact, so get your horses over the back. As we used to do when I trained, fox hunting horses professionally. We'd spend the first couple of months getting them ready to go in the field, just walking them. We're taking them out for hacks and just keeping them long and stretching and moving, and developing them that way. And then we start to trot after a few weeks, or months even. So once again, remember, you can do a lot of good work in the walk. And just remember that we don't want to do anything badly, that being our optimal thing. There's no point. It doesn't do anything. Now, this is a pretty good canter here and a little better, though you see how, as you said, she has difficulties going to the short sides because she gets there and she can hardly make that turn. So once again, I feel like she's still at a place where I want to keep that canter to a minimum yet. And you could see when she came to that corner before, she kind of braced against her front legs. Not a bad little lengthening there. I'd like to see her neck out a little longer, but it's getting pretty good. Little canter shot there that was not too bad, but once again, I wouldn't do too much of that. It's not completely hollow, but it's not completely over the back yet either. Once again, good stretch there in the trot. Now look how loose the horse's back legs are starting to look. They get that lovely feeling with the hocks that look like they're really flexing and stepping deep under the body. Oh, really good here, but what a far cry from the first little clip of video that we saw. Really nice here, getting really deep and starting to swing a little more actively as well. Really nice downwards transition. I love how you made that, letting the horse stretch down. That's exactly what we want to do. And take your time. You know, we never want to be in a hurry. That's one of the big things. People who are training horses, you know, that are just beginning and they're all in a hurry to get them to stop up short and do these kind of things. We never want to do that with young horses. And once again, because it's very hard on their backs. Once again, really nice stretch here. And obviously we can see that this is on different days. Now look how deep this one is. Now this is starting to look really good. Now she's slowing down a little bit better in here. And you can see the balance is still a little difficult for the horse as it comes around there. A little too high in the head there. It needs to lower a little bit. There like that. That's what I want to see. I'd like to see that a little bit slower, but that's pretty good. Yeah, once again, not a bad canter, not too bad. I wouldn't do too much of this. It still just looks a little hard on the front legs to me. I don't see her rolling over her back enough. It's getting there, but just keep that to a minimum. A few circles, a time or so around. You know, you're basically just testing the canter. The canter's not good enough yet to really do much with, but it's good to just come and test it and see how it feels. Not bad there. Once again, like the neck a little bit out further. And once again, getting pretty deep in the stretch. Nice stretch in the canter there. Getting kind of deep. That looks pretty good. And you can see as the horse got longer how that shoulder began to come out further. And once again, if you go and watch racehorses, correctly trained racehorses run in the exact same way. Go back and if you ever get a chance to find a video of Secretariat running, that's to this day the roundest horse I've ever seen. The horse had the most flexible back of any horse I've ever seen in my life. And galloped round over its back. And of course, it used to just, you know, every stride it would be another 20 feet ahead of the other horses behind it because it was so completely over its back and so flexible. So coming back to this walk work, remember this is all a bunch of different days here we're looking at. So, but I'm seeing good stuff. There isn't a day here that you know, a little clip. They've all been pretty much, you know, on the money in terms of in the right direction with this horse, which is exactly what we want to do. I think Natalia's done a good job with this and has certainly shown that she's got the right idea and the ability to carry it out. Not bad here. She has the frame up a little bit. And once again, I feel like it gets a little scrambly at that height. I feel like her neck still needs to be a little bit lower. Not terrible, but you can see that she starts to scramble. The tracks get a little bit fast, and you can see her get U-neck there. So I don't think she's really ready to come up too much. Like right there, she lost her back and became a little hollow there. So that is a little, at least for this particular day, that for me was too high up with the neck. Same here. Now this is all a little quick. Once again, I'm not sure the order of these submissions of what you did with these. It looks like the leaves are changing here, but now it's starting to get good. So I would not be in too much of a hurry to try to bring her neck up much. I mean, until you see, which is kind of a good guideline. until you see that hole behind the saddle fill up a little more and kind of flatten out, she's probably not going to be ready to come up too high. And my feeling is that she still needs to stay pretty low here. And I think you feel that, and you said that in your letter as well. So by all means, experiment with it. But if you feel like you lose the quality of the trot and the position of the back, then we need to go back down again. Once again, that's what guides everything that we do. So if we lose the back, whatever we're doing really has no value and is going to be ultimately counterproductive to training. But we can see here, once again, compared to that very first video, which we're going to see here in a moment, how much better she is. Now you can see a little high here. Once again, she gets a little high-headed. And when she does, you can see how the legs almost start to not move. They look like they paddle a little more, the front legs. And that's what happens when the horse disunites its back. You know, in order to get a really straight swing over the back, the horse has to be lifted in the back. So once again, this looks to me like a little too high in the head and neck for her. She's struggling a little more here and not quite as fluent. So we need to get that back down a little deeper. But once again, by all means, test it and see what you get. But once again, if the quality of the trot, becomes worse by virtue of trying to bring the neck up, we know she's simply not ready for that. That's getting a little bit better. But still, even in this frame, we'd like to see her. She's shortening back in at the shoulder. I want to keep that neck out longer from the shoulder so she stays out. Same thing here with this canter. You can kind of see her bracing against her front feet a little bit. That's why I don't like that canter much. And I wouldn't do too much of it because it looks like it's going to be hard on her feet. So until she gets a little rounder and can swing, you've had some moments in the canter that we've seen here that have been better than others. But once again, I don't have any clue by these if they're in chronological order or what we're looking at here. But you've certainly had some good, better canters than what I just saw there as we went on. And once again, like everything else, she probably needs to keep a pretty open canter. We don't want to try to shorten her up because that's when she's going to start bracing against her front legs. Once again, this is finishing in a nice trot. So again, look how nice and even the pairs are there, and she even starts to get a little elevation once in a while. That is, elevates her forehand once in a while by pushing off the ground. Remember, that's what we want to have happen. Once the horse gets in the right frame, the horse lifts its whole back, and the back legs actually lift the front end off the ground. Now this is a little better canter here. So your neck gets out a little bit further in front of her, and so that's a little better. It doesn't get so bracy looking. Though you can see those turns are hard for her. She starts bracing and pulling her neck up. Kind of like she's doing there, but you get her back out there. And once again, you can see that's that downwards transition, so you didn't fight it too much. That's just the thing to do. Just let it back out again. You know, once you can feel if the horse is going to have a good transition or not, by how balanced the horse is. But if the horse isn't balanced and you have to make the downward transition, just let it be what it will be, because you can't make it into something it's not ever going to be. That is, by going about like that. If the horse is out of balance, and the canter is just not strong enough to keep her over her back, no amount of fighting the horse is going to make the horse canter better or have a better transition. Once again, we see so many people doing things over and over and over again with horses, trying to perfect them, when usually what happens with that is it just gets worse. Getting back to a better trot stretch and a nice downward transition. Now, ultimately, that's the way we want those transitions to be. But as I said, that last canter transition, we want to start when we canter getting the same kind of thing, slowing the horse down and letting it come back to a stretch in the trot. But I just don't think this horse is ready to do that. So I think that's basically what your problem is in this clip, like that. It's just, and once again, you're doing the right thing. Don't frustrate yourself and don't frustrate the horse by trying to make the horse do something it just simply can't do. I mean, just any more than you could take a little kid who's had 2 months of ballet and say, okay, now, go do a grand jeté across the floor, whatever. It just doesn't work that way. You have to develop the strength and the coordination to be able to do it. Good stretch in the walk here. Came up just a little bit, but not bad. Back to a nice leg yield. That's very good. And once again, as we work our horse, remember we want to work up and down through the gaits in just about the same way most of the time. Now, a little caveat to that, I always, whenever a horse gives me something that's better than it's ever done before, I stop immediately. So now let's go back and we're going to take a look. There's a little canter bit there, and that was a little too short a canter. But now we're going back to the horse as it was a year ago. So once again, you can see how much more hollow the horse is, how much more pronounced the ewe-neck. Look how the tiny little strides the horse is making. And you can see how the front end, back end are not swinging together. You can see how you're getting this funny little knee action in front, which actually with this horse exasperates its winging of its front leg. So that's one thing you'll see with horses that kind of wing or paddle. See how this one's leg flips out to the left. It's left front leg. You can see it kind of wings out to the outside. But what you'll see is when the horse is over its back, it doesn't do that as much, and that's true of any horse that you do. I've even trained, some Tennessee walking horses and things like Missouri foxtrotters that have these legs that kind of go in circles, as some of the old Andalusians and stuff do as well. But when you get them over the backs, that does straighten out to a great deal. So, and once again, that's very important to that, because remember, that's a weakness in a horse. So that means if you don't have it over its back, it's mean that idea of the shock absorbers is even going to be worse, because the horse has got this, built-in sort of paddle thing that's already got some part of its joint not working correctly or the way it should because of a malformation of the joint itself. So once again, all that's going to be exaggerated. So once again, look at how far we've come from this to the beautiful rides that we've just seen. Now, once again, in the other clips, yes, once in a while she came up and down. We tried things that weren't all the way there, but she always came back to the stretch and how much more beautiful the horse looks. And you can see this horse, you touch the reins at this point, and she's just resisting upwards because that's what she knew. And once again, you can see how right there, how the back legs are almost falling out behind the horse as it's trotting. And then when she goes faster, she does this funny kind of thing where she just takes quick little short strides, and you'll see that she actually looks like she wings even more, as I'm saying. So getting this horse over the back will do a great deal to straighten that front leg out more than anything else. I see shoers trying to correct these things, and getting the horse over the back is what corrects it to the degree that it can be corrected. So once again, great job, Natalia. Look forward to seeing you again soon. This is Will Faerber from Archer Ride. Keep up the great work because you're well on track. Here's a little bonus section on this one on training your eye. Here's some still photos. Here's the horse stretching into the contact, or the horse looks now up into working trot. Look at the beautiful diagonal pairs swinging through. Here's how the horse used to look. Broken over in the neck, collapsed in the back, the beginnings of kissing spine, stabbing the ground with its front legs. Here the horse once again is now in a correct working trot. So put these images in your mind. And once again, you can judge for yourself how right or wrong horses are by how they're physically developing. Collapsed back, hollow, correct swinging over the back, up in a working frame. Hope that helps.